You see, people who have avoidant tendencies aren't incapable of love. They just fear it in the form most people present it. If you chase them, smother them, or try to force closeness, they run, not because they don't care, but because they fear losing their independence, their sense of self. So, what kind of person does an avoidant truly bond with for life? It's the person who can love without clinging, someone who brings warmth without pressure, someone who can say, I want you, but I don't need you to complete me. That energy is magnetic to an avoidant. It makes them feel safe. Think about it. If you show that you have your own passions, your own friends, your own life, you're not demanding they fill every gap in you. You're showing them, I choose you out of desire, not desperation. That's the difference. An avoidant bonds with the person who proves love doesn't have to feel like a cage. It can feel like freedom shared with the right partner. And when they find that, they don't just stay, they bond for life. Avoidants fear dependency, not intimacy. This is one of the most misunderstood truths about them. When most people encounter someone who pulls away, they assume that person doesn't want closeness at all, that they're cold or incapable of love. But that's rarely the case. In reality, many avoidants long for intimacy just as deeply as anyone else, but they are terrified of what dependency represents to them. They've often learned through past experiences, whether in childhood or later relationships, that relying on someone means giving up safety or control. It means risking rejection, abandonment, or suffocation. So when intimacy starts to blur into dependency, their instinct isn't to lean in. It's to step back. Imagine someone growing up in an environment where needing others always came at a cost. Maybe their feelings weren't consistently met, or their needs felt like a burden to the people they depended on. Over time, that child learns a painful equation. Closeness equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals pain. As adults, this translates into a reflex. When love starts feeling too close, when someone starts expecting too much of them, their alarm bells go off. They don't think, I hate intimacy. They think, if I give in to this closeness, I'll lose myself and I might get hurt. It's a defense mechanism, not a lack of emotion. This is why so many partners of avoidance feel frustrated and confused. They see glimpses of real connection, tenderness, even passion, only for it to be followed by sudden distance. But this pattern isn't about rejecting intimacy. It's about rejecting dependency. The avoidant is trying to protect themselves from being consumed, from losing the independence they've worked so hard to build. What they truly fear is not the act of being close, but the idea that closeness will trap them, that their identity will dissolve into someone else's needs. That's why the right approach is never to chase or pressure. Pressure confirms their fear. If I give more of myself, I'll lose my freedom. Instead, the way to show them that intimacy is safe is by proving that closeness doesn't erase independence. When they see that love doesn't mean obligation, that they are free to be themselves without constant demands, they begin to relax, and in that relaxation, intimacy blooms naturally. It's important to recognize that intimacy and dependency are not the same. Intimacy is about connection, trust, vulnerability, and emotional presence. Dependency, in the unhealthy sense, is about leaning on someone so heavily that you can't stand without them. Avoidants don't fear intimacy in its pure form. They fear being engulfed by someone else's needs. They fear losing the balance of autonomy that makes them feel safe. But when they meet someone who can connect deeply while still standing strong on their own, that fear starts to fade. So when you see an avoidant pull away, don't mistake it for a lack of desire. Understand it for what it is, a defense against dependency. Beneath that defense lies the very real capacity for intimacy, waiting for the kind of connection that feels safe enough to let it come alive. Magnetic connection comes from self-sufficiency. When someone can stand firmly on their own 2 feet, they radiate a certain energy that naturally draws others in, especially those with avoidant tendencies. It's not about being cold or detached, but about showing that your life is already full, rich, and meaningful without needing another person to complete it. This independence is not only attractive, it feels safe to an avoidant. They're not being asked to step into the role of caretaker, rescuer, or the sole provider of happiness. Instead, they see someone who is already whole, and that wholeness invites them to explore a bond without fear of being consumed. Think of it this way: desperation repels, but self-sufficiency attracts. When someone constantly seeks validation, reassurance, or approval, an avoidant instinctively recoils. It reinforces their fear that closeness will drain them, that intimacy will cost them their freedom. On the other hand, when they encounter a person who has their own passions, goals, and identity, it feels refreshing. That person doesn't demand their energy, they share it. They don't ask to be saved, they walk alongside as equals. This dynamic turns connection into a choice, not a burden, and that choice is magnetic. Self-sufficiency also communicates confidence. It shows that you know how to manage your own emotions, that you can handle life's challenges without collapsing into dependence. This doesn't mean you never lean on someone. It simply means you don't need them as a crutch. To an avoidant, that level of emotional maturity is reassuring. They don't feel like they're being pulled into a situation where they'll drown in someone else's insecurities. Instead, they can relax into the relationship knowing that closeness won't come at the expense of their peace of mind. What's even more powerful is how self-sufficiency changes the energy of interactions. When you're secure in yourself, your attention shifts from grasping at someone to genuinely connecting with them. You're not performing to win their approval or clinging to avoid being left. You're present, curious, and authentic. That presence is magnetic because it isn't tainted by fear or control. It gives the avoidant space to breathe, and paradoxically, that space is what allows them to lean in closer. This doesn't mean playing hard to get or pretending to be independent when you're not. True self-sufficiency is not an act, it's a lifestyle. It comes from nurturing your own sense of identity, investing in friendships, hobbies, and goals that fulfill you. It's about knowing that your life has meaning with or without a partner. When you embody that, you give off a quiet confidence that makes an avoidant feel drawn to you in a way they can't quite explain. Ultimately, magnetic connection with an avoidant doesn't come from proving your love through endless effort. It comes from being so grounded in yourself that they can trust your love isn't fueled by neediness. They can sense that you're there because you want to be, not because you can't survive without them. That energy disarms their fears and makes them want to bond deeper because, for the first time, love feels like a choice instead of a trap. The strongest bond is desire, not desperation. This is a truth that many people overlook when trying to build a lasting connection, especially with someone who leans avoidant. Desperation is heavy. It carries an energy of neediness that says, "I can't be okay unless you give me what I want." That energy creates pressure, and pressure is exactly what pushes an avoidant away. They don't want to feel like they are someone's oxygen tank, responsible for keeping another person alive emotionally. But desire feels light, freeing, and magnetic. It communicates, "I want you because you add beauty to my life, not because I'd fall apart without you." That difference makes all the difference. When love is driven by desperation, it shows up in constant chasing, over-explaining, or clinging to every little interaction. It's the late night texts that beg for reassurance, the over-analysis of silence, and the subtle belief that if the other person leaves, life will collapse. This creates a dynamic where one partner is always grasping and the other feels trapped. For an avoidant, that kind of bond isn't love, it feels like being cornered. They'll pull away not because they don't care, but because the energy suffocates them. In contrast, desire is rooted in choice, not survival. It comes from knowing that you're complete on your own, and still wanting to share life with someone. This is incredibly attractive to an avoidant because it removes the fear of engulfment. They don't have to carry the weight of your happiness. Instead, they get to enjoy the spark of your presence without feeling responsible for your stability. They can lean in because they know they're with someone who isn't clinging for dear life but choosing to walk alongside them. Another powerful aspect of desire is that it allows space. When you operate from desire, you can give your partner room to breathe, room to be themselves, without spiraling into panic. You don't see distance as rejection, you see it as part of the natural rhythm of a relationship. That calm confidence is deeply reassuring to an avoidant. It tells them, "You're free, and I'm still here." Ironically, that freedom often makes them want to come closer, because it shows love can exist without chains. Desperation, on the other hand, creates urgency. It pushes for answers, timelines, labels, and constant reassurance. While clarity and commitment are important, when they're demanded from a place of panic, they come across as control. Avoidants associate control with losing themselves, so they retreat. But when you approach them with desire instead of need, you shift the entire energy of the relationship. They feel wanted, not trapped. They feel chosen, not obligated. That shift creates an environment where real intimacy can grow. At its core, the strongest bond comes when both people know they're complete on their own, but choose to be together. It's in that space where desire lives, where love is not a desperate attempt to fill a void, but a joyful decision to share life. Avoidants, in particular, respond to that kind of love because it feels safe, empowering, and real. It's not a prison, it's a partnership, and when they feel desired instead of needed, that's when they start to bond for life. Love that feels like freedom lasts. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this is not just a preference, it's a necessity. They don't run from connection because they don't care. They run when connection begins to feel like captivity. The moment love starts resembling a cage where every move is scrutinized and every choice is restricted, their natural instinct is to retreat. But when love allows them to breathe, when it embraces individuality and honors personal space, that's when they can finally lean in without fear. That kind of love doesn't just survive, it endures. Freedom in love doesn't mean distance or detachment. It's not about living completely separate lives or refusing to commit. It's about creating a bond where both partners feel free to be themselves while choosing to come together. Avoidants thrive in this dynamic because it tells them they won't lose their identity in the relationship. They won't be swallowed whole by someone else's expectations. Instead, they're free to love as themselves, not as a version of who they think they must be to keep the relationship alive. When love feels like freedom, it gives space for authenticity. It allows both people to pursue their passions, maintain friendships, and grow individually without guilt. For an avoidant, this is the reassurance they need, that intimacy won't strip them of independence, that togetherness doesn't mean erasing personal boundaries. And paradoxically, the more freedom they feel, the more they want to invest in the relationship. It's the very absence of pressure that draws them closer. On the flip side, love that restricts and suffocates quickly breeds resistance. If one partner tries to control, to dictate how often they should text, how much time they must spend together, or how feelings should be expressed, an avoidant feels cornered. The relationship becomes a weight instead of a joy. No matter how much affection they feel, the instinct for self-preservation kicks in and they distance themselves. It's not rejection of the person, it's rejection of the prison. The beauty of love rooted in freedom is that it creates trust. When an avoidant sees that they are not being forced to conform, they gradually begin to soften. They realize they can share their heart without losing their autonomy. This balance builds a deeper kind of loyalty than control ever could. It says, "You're free, but I know you choose me." and being chosen out of freedom, not obligation, creates a bond that is stronger than any forced commitment. When both partners can exist as whole, independent individuals who choose to intertwine their lives, love becomes sustainable. It doesn't burn out under the weight of demands or suffocate under the need for constant reassurance. Instead, it breathes, it evolves, and it lasts. For avoidance, that's the kind of love that feels safe enough to stay in. And for anyone, it's the kind of love worth building. A whole person attracts a whole bond. When you show up to a relationship already rooted in your own identity, passions, and sense of worth, you communicate a strength that is deeply attractive, especially to someone who struggles with avoidance. Avoidants often fear being consumed by another person's needs. They worry that love will mean losing themselves or being responsible for holding someone else together. But when you are whole, when you've built a fulfilling life outside of the relationship, you bring reassurance instead of pressure. You're not asking them to complete you, you're inviting them to complement you. Being whole doesn't mean being perfect or never needing anyone. It means you've developed emotional resilience, self-awareness, and independence. You know who you are and what you stand for. You don't rely on a partner to define your worth, and you don't treat love as the answer to every fear or insecurity. This makes a world of difference to an avoidant. Instead of feeling like they'll be swallowed by your dependency, they see a partner who can stand beside them as an equal. That equality is what opens the door to genuine, lasting intimacy. When you show up incomplete, looking for someone to fix the emptiness inside you, it creates a dynamic that feels heavy. The relationship stops being about connection and starts being about survival. Every silence becomes a threat, every bit of space feels like abandonment, and every disagreement turns into a test of loyalty. For an avoidant, this dynamic is unbearable. They see it as a loss of freedom, a signal that being close means constant obligation. But when you are whole, the energy is different. You bring stability rather than demand it. You offer companionship rather than cling to it. Wholeness also means that you're living a full life outside of the relationship. You pursue hobbies, nurture friendships, and grow individually. This isn't just healthy, it's magnetic. It shows that your world doesn't collapse without your partner, and that you can love them without making them the center of your existence. To an avoidant, this feels safe because it reassures them that intimacy won't erase individuality. It makes the relationship a place of choice rather than a cage of necessity. What's powerful about this dynamic is that it inspires reciprocity. When you embody wholeness, you encourage your partner to do the same. Instead of relying on each other out of fear, you build a relationship where both people bring their best selves to the table. That creates a bond rooted in desire, respect, and genuine affection. It's not two half people clinging to each other to survive, it's two whole people choosing to walk together. This kind of bond is the one that lasts. It has balance, it has space for growth. It has the strength to weather challenges without collapsing under the weight of codependency. For someone avoidant, it's the only kind of bond that feels safe enough to invest in fully. And for anyone, it's the kind of love that doesn't just survive, it thrives. And so, when we look at avoidance, it becomes clear. They don't run from love, they run from the kind of love that feels like pressure, demand, or dependency. But when love feels like freedom, when it comes from a place of desire instead of desperation, when it's built between two whole people choosing each other, that's the kind of bond that lasts a lifetime. Thank you for giving me your time and attention today. I hope is that you walk away not just understanding avoidance better, but also understanding the power of showing up whole, confident, and free in every relationship you build.